So moving on, our next item on the agenda, we have an educational speech based on general and specific speech purposes. And this is from the Success and Communications Project and will be presented by Ed Goodwin.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good evening once again, everybody, particularly fellow Toastmasters, our Speechcraft participants, and most welcome guests. This evening, in the next few minutes, I'll be giving a talk on general and specific speech purposes. It's linked to Project 3, actually, of the Competent Communication Manual, which is about getting to the point. Now, someone said the purpose of life, the purpose of life is to live a life of purpose. But I'm not here to tell you about life and all this philosophy. I'm here to tell you about speech, purpose as it relates to speech. I mean, what do you call a speech without a purpose? What do you call a speech without a purpose? Someone? Awful. Awful? You know, yeah, wasted, speechless, whatever. You know, yeah, so you want to give a speech without a purpose. You don't want at the end of your speech, you don't want the audience to be like, why did he say that? Why? You know, they didn't get the point. So it's wasted. So you want to make sure that you speak with purpose. Now, starting with myself as a live example, the general purpose of my presentation is to inform you. The specific purpose is to get you as a speaker to be absolutely clear about what you want your audience to do or know at the end of your talk or presentation. Now, a general purpose is the broad intent of a speech. I thought that was quite a very interesting definition. A general purpose is the broad intent of a speech. I think it's saying the same thing, really, isn't it? Broad intent really is general purpose, but yeah, it's the broad intent of a speech. But when we talk about general purpose, there are four most common general purposes of speech. I'll list them for you now. They are to inform, to persuade, to entertain, and to inspire. Those are the four most common general purposes. Now, coming to the specific purpose. The specific purpose is a one-sentence statement that narrows down the general purpose and describes what the speech will accomplish. Now, that one-sentence statement should be, number one, worded from the audience's viewpoint. You need to consider the audience's viewpoint when you're drafting that one-sentence statement. And what that simply means is that, what do you want your audience to be able to do after listening to your speech? What do you want your audience to be able to do? What's the call to action? You know, like I said earlier, I said the specific purpose of my presentation now is to get you, as a speaker, to be absolutely clear about what you want your audience to do or know at the end of your talk. Now, the second thing to know there is to be specific in your drafting a specific purpose. That means the wording should be precise. As you can recall, when I told you my specific purpose, I'm sure you will agree that it's quite precise. And the third point there is your specific purpose, you should make sure that it's attainable. The specific purpose should be realistic and possible to achieve. Should be possible and realistic to achieve. I remember a while ago, Wale was giving a speech about smart, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. Now, talking about your specific purpose being attainable and being realistic, I was just thinking about this Mars project. Recently they were recruiting for some people to volunteer to go to Mars, to find where it's like, or whatever. So this guy was organizing a workshop for these volunteers, very keen volunteers, and then one of the volunteers asked the workshop coordinator, "Oh, please, if we get to Mars, how are we going to survive there?" And the workshop coordinator was like, "The question is that if you're brave and courageous enough to come here saying that you want to go to Mars, the last thing you should be worried about is whether or not you're going to survive them. Don't expect me to organize a workshop telling you how to survive in maths. That's not realistic. That's not possible to achieve as far as I'm concerned. So you can see that's a responsible speech leader there. You have to make your purpose attainable, realistic, and possible. And interestingly, you won't believe it. Yesterday I was just pondering that analogy I just gave to you, and today in the news it was announced that five Britons are among the 100 people recruited to go to Mars. What was a coincidence? A well-organized speech. I'm going to talk now about a well-organized speech. A well-organized speech is more likely to achieve its purposes and will help the audience perceive you, the speaker, as convincing, enthusiastic, sincere, and even spontaneous. Now for me, those qualities I just listed down, convincing, enthusiastic, sincere, and spontaneity, for me, when those things come together, it helps you, the speaker, to gain credibility, to gain traction. It doesn't matter the audience. Once you can exhibit those qualities, once the audience sees those qualities, it makes you a credible speaker. And once you're a credible speaker, your work is half done really, because you are before people who believe in you and stuff like that. Talking about credibility, I was reading the Toastmasters magazine recently, and the international president was basically talking about the competent communicator, competent leadership track. So somebody was asking him, what's the best track to follow? Is it competent communicator or competent leadership? And he said, no, don't worry about that. He said what he's really worried about, what he really wants to achieve out of the Toastmaster experience is the credibility track. He wants to be a credible speaker. That's his ultimate aim, not simply just achieving a competent communicator award. He's seeing beyond. What do you want to become? So the point here is that you should aim for credibility. Have that in mind when you're drafting your speech purpose. Now, here's a useful quote by Ralph C. Smedley, who is the founder of Toastmasters. He said, your life is much like a speech in that to be a success, it must have a purpose and a plan. In the year 1962, the quote was in 1962. So we'll draft it now, but I'll substitute 2015. If the year 2015 is to be as useful, satisfying, happy one for you, there must be both a purpose in your mind and a plan for carrying out that purpose. Now, a speech might seem to have two purposes. For example, an informative speech that is also entertaining, simply because the speaker told some funny stories. But it's very important in that context, you have the responsibility as a speaker then to be very careful that you stay on point. You don't want your audience to just laugh, and forget the specific point. Especially when the speaker is giving you a fire procedure. And then you blame for burning your fingers. Now, I'll conclude with 3 important snippets or tips. Now, number 1, ensure the beginning, body, and conclusion reinforce the purpose of your speech. By the time you conclude the speech, the audience should be able to state in one simple sentence the specific purpose of your speech or presentation. Number 2, always remember that an audience wants to be informed, educated, and entertained. And finally, find your purpose, make a plan, execute the plan, and you as a speaker can expect to have a meaningful and successful presentation. Thank you very much.